I stared at my phone, reading the message thread for the 10th time, my stomach turning with each scroll. The text between my husband Omar and his secretary Valerie painted a vivid picture I couldn't unsee. Can't wait to see you tonight, followed by heart emojis. Miss you already, with a kissing face. My anniversary dinner sat cold and untouched on our dining room table, candles burning down to stubs. I'm Faith, and after 12 years of marriage, I discovered my husband's affair on our anniversary, of all days. The irony wasn't lost on me. Honey, I'm so sorry, but this meeting is running late. Omar's voice message from 2 hours ago played in my head. Don't wait up. We'll celebrate tomorrow, I promise. My phone buzzed. A text from my sister Ellie. Did he make it home for your special dinner? I picked up my wine glass, took a long sip, and typed back, no, busy with work, again. 3 dots appeared immediately. That's the 3rd time this month. Want me to come over? Not tonight, I'm fine. I wasn't fine, but I needed time to think. The affair revelation hadn't come as a complete shock. The signs had been there. Late nights, mysterious phone calls, the sudden gym membership he never used. But seeing the actual messages made everything real. The worst part? I'd found them by accident while using his iPad to order his anniversary gift. My phone rang. It was Terrell, my colleague and closest friend at work. Happy anniversary, he sang into the phone. How's the celebration going? I swallowed hard. It's not. What? Where's Omar? Working late, with Valerie. My voice cracked on her name. Silence filled the line. Then, Faith, what's going on? I walked to the kitchen, dumping the perfectly cooked salmon into the trash. I found messages, lots of them. Turns out his late nights aren't exactly work-related. That son of a... Terrell stopped himself. Want me to kill him? I know people. Despite everything, I laughed. No murder necessary. Not yet anyway. What are you going to do? I looked at my reflection in the kitchen window, seeing not the devastated wife I expected, but something else. Determination. I'm not sure, but I'm not going to cry or scream or throw his clothes on the lawn. That's surprisingly calm of you, maybe because I'm not done thinking this through. I opened my laptop, which still displayed the luxury watch I'd been about to order Omar. He thinks he's so clever, so in control, but he has no idea who he's dealing with. Faith? Terrell's voice held a warning. What's going on in that brilliant mind of yours? Remember that project management course we took? About how the best way to deal with a problem is to break it down into manageable pieces. You're not seriously... I need to go. Omar just pulled into the driveway. I hung up before Terrell could respond. I heard Omar's key in the lock, followed by his footsteps. I quickly closed the message thread on my phone and plastered on a smile. Baby, I'm so sorry, he said, loosening his tie as he walked in. That meeting with the investors went completely off track. He kissed my cheek, and I forced myself not to flinch. His cologne was different, sweeter, more feminine. It's fine, I said, standing up. I understand how important work is. He looked at the dining room table, guilt flashing across his face. You cooked. Faith, like I said, it's fine. I started clearing the table. There's always next year, right? Omar reached for my hand. Let me make it up to you this weekend. We'll go somewhere nice, just the 2 of us. I smiled, thinking of the hotel receipt I'd found in his email, already booked for that weekend. A reservation for 2 under V. Roberts. Sounds perfect. Later that night, as Omar slept soundly beside me, I opened my laptop and created a new document. At the top, I typed, Project Karma, Timeline and Objectives. My sister Ellie always said I was too forgiving, too willing to look the other way. But she didn't know this side of me. The methodical, strategic side I'd inherited from our father. The side that knew revenge was a dish best served not just cold, but with precise, calculated portions. I glanced at Omar's peaceful face and thought about Valerie, probably sleeping just as peacefully in her bed. They had no idea what was coming. Sometimes the best revenge isn't swift or dramatic. It's patient, deliberate, and absolutely devastating. I began to type, mapping out my plan. After all, I had always been good at project management. You're not planning to confront them? Ellie nearly spilled her coffee across my kitchen counter. It was Saturday morning, and Omar was at the gym, code for his weekend rendezvous with Valerie. Confrontation is predictable, I said, pulling up my project timeline on my laptop. I want something more effective. Ellie leaned over my shoulder, scanning the document. Faith, this is detailed, like scary detailed. I learned from the best. I smiled at my little sister, now a successful corporate lawyer. Remember how Dad always said the key to winning isn't throwing the first punch, but knowing exactly where and when to land it? Yeah, but this isn't a courtroom strategy. This is your marriage. Was my marriage. I clicked through to Omar's company directory. See Valerie here? Little Miss Executive Assistant with big dreams. She's been applying for a promotion to junior executive. And? And I happen to know, thanks to Terrell in HR, that she's the frontrunner. I pulled up another document. But what if some concerning discrepancies appeared in her performance reviews? Faith. Ellie's lawyer mode activated. That could be completely legal, I interrupted. I'm not creating fake documents. I'm just making sure certain existing issues don't get overlooked. My phone buzzed. A text from Omar. Great workout. Grabbing breakfast with some guys from the gym. Back in a few hours. I showed Ellie the message. Some guys from the gym, huh? Funny how Valerie posted a breakfast photo at Café Laurent 20 minutes ago. I pulled up Instagram, showing Valerie's perfectly arranged avocado toast. You're monitoring their social media? Knowledge is power, sis. I closed my laptop. Now, want to help me with phase 1? An hour later, we sat in my car outside Valerie's apartment building. This feels wrong, Ellie muttered. Wrong like sleeping with a married man? I checked my watch. Okay, her brother Frank should be leaving for his shift at the hospital now. Right on cue, Frank emerged from the building, medical bag in hand. I stepped out of the car, timing my walk perfectly to bump into him. Oh, I'm so sorry, I said, helping him pick up his dropped bag. Dr. Roberts, right? I'm Faith, a friend of Valerie's. Frank's expression shifted from annoyed to interested. You know my sister? Through work. She's been such a blessing to the company. I paused, letting concern cross my face. Though I've been worried about her lately, those late nights can't be healthy. Late nights? You know, with the new executive position she's up for. All those private meetings with the married executives. I trailed off deliberately. Frank's face darkened. What private meetings? Oh, I shouldn't have. Please don't mention this to her. I'm sure it's nothing. I hurried away, hiding my smile. Back in the car, Ellie shook her head. That was masterful and terrifying. Just wait. I pulled out my phone and opened my email. Now for part 2. I composed a quick email to Omar from an anonymous account. Your wife is more observant than you think. Careful where you leave your iPad. That's it? Ellie asked. For now, let him stew. I hit send. Next week, Valerie gets an anonymous tip about Omar's history with his previous secretary. Previous secretary? There wasn't one. But Omar doesn't know that Valerie doesn't know that. My phone buzzed again. Omar, coming home early. Miss you. Paranoia works fast, I commented, showing Ellie the text. Faith. Ellie grabbed my hand. Are you sure about this? You could just divorce him, take half, and be done. I thought about the 12 years I'd invested in this marriage, the dreams we'd built, the future we'd planned. This isn't just about revenge, Ellie. It's about justice. They think they're so clever, playing their little game, but they've never faced someone who knows how to play chess. And what's your end game? I started the car. To teach them both that actions have consequences. Omar loses his perfect image, Valerie loses her promotion dreams, and I smiled. I get to write the ending to this story. You're scary sometimes, you know that. I learned from watching you in court. I pulled into traffic. Now, want to help me plan the next phase? It involves Valerie's performance review next week. Do I have a choice? That's what I love about you, sis. You always know the right answer. As we drove home, I thought about Omar's face when he'd left this morning. The guilty kiss on my cheek. The lies that came so easily to him now. Soon, very soon, he'd learn that karma doesn't just happen. Sometimes it needs a little push in the right direction. And I was ready to push. Hard. The changes started small, but grew more noticeable each day. Omar began checking his phone less frequently, keeping it face down on tables. Valerie stopped posting her usual morning coffee selfies, but the real satisfaction came during my surprise lunch visit to Omar's office. Mrs. Martin, Valerie's voice cracked when I stepped off the elevator. Her perfectly manicured fingers fumbled with her keyboard. I didn't know you were coming. Just bringing lunch for my husband. I held up the bag from Omar's favorite deli. Is he in? He's on a call, but I'll wait. I sat in one of the reception chairs, watching Valerie squirm. Her phone buzzed and she jumped. The anonymous texts had been Terrell's idea. Unknown number keeps calling, hangs up after one ring, he'd explained. Classic paranoia inducer. Omar's office door opened. Valerie, did you finish the Henderson prop? He stopped mid-sentence when he saw me. Faith, what a surprise. I stood, kissing his cheek. Thought we could have lunch together, like we used to. His eyes darted to Valerie, then back to me. Of course, come in. Inside his office, Omar's nervous energy was palpable. He cleared files from his desk with shaking hands. Everything okay? I asked innocently. You seem tense. Just busy. The Henderson deal is... Omar? Valerie's voice came through the intercom. Frank's here to see you. The color drained from Omar's face. Frank? Valerie's brother? I raised an eyebrow. Why would he... The office door burst open. Frank stormed in, his hospital ID still hanging from his scrubs. We need to talk. Omar stood. This isn't a good time. I'm having lunch with my wife. Perfect. Frank's eyes locked onto me. She should hear this too. I sat back, watching the scene unfold. This was better than I'd imagined. My sister's been getting some interesting phone calls, Frank continued. Anonymous tips about your history with assistants. I don't know what you're talking about, Omar stammered. No? How about the late-night meetings, the private dinners? Frank stepped closer. The hotel receipts? I gasped dramatically. Hotel receipts? Omar's eyes widened. Faith, I can explain... Explain what? I stood, letting tears well up. What's he talking about, Omar? Nothing. It's all a misunderstanding. Omar turned to Frank. You need to leave. Now. Gladly. But if I hear one more thing about you and my sister... There is nothing going on with your sister. Valerie appeared in the doorway, face pale. Frank, what are you doing here? The look that passed between Omar and Valerie spoke volumes. I pretended not to notice. Just having a chat with your boss, Frank growled, about professional boundaries. This is inappropriate, Omar said. All of you, out of my office. I picked up my purse, letting my hand shake. I think I lost my appetite. Faith, wait. No. I held up my hand. I need some air, and you clearly have some explaining to do to Frank. In the elevator, I pulled out my phone and texted Terrell. Phase 3 complete, better than expected. Later that evening, Omar came home late, looking exhausted. About today. I don't want to talk about it. I focused on chopping vegetables for dinner. I'm sure there's a perfectly reasonable explanation for everything. There is. Frank is just protective of his sister. He misunderstood some things. Like hotel receipts? Omar loosened his tie. Business meetings, Faith? You know how it is? Of course. I smiled sweetly. How's Valerie handling all this? What do you mean? Well, with her brother causing scenes at work, it can't look good for her promotion chances. Omar froze. How did you know about the promotion? Office gossip. I shrugged. Terrell mentioned it. Why? Is it a secret? No. Omar grabbed a beer from the fridge. Just complicated now. Everything seems complicated lately. I slid the vegetables into a pan. Remember when things were simple? When we first got married? Guilt flashed across his face. Faith, our anniversary's coming up soon, I continued. Maybe we could do something special, just us? Of course. He kissed my cheek, relief evident in his voice. Anything you want. That night, I updated my project timeline while Omar showered. Terrell had confirmed that Valerie's performance review was scheduled for tomorrow. The anonymous complaints about her unprofessional relationship with senior management had been filed. Her brother's outburst would be the final nail in her promotion coffin. My phone buzzed with a text from Ellie. You're actually scary good at this. I smiled, typing back, just wait, the best part's still coming. Because while Omar thought today's drama was the worst of it, he had no idea what I had planned for our anniversary. After all, every good story needs a memorable ending. She didn't get the promotion. Terrell slid into the booth across from me at our usual lunch spot, grinning. You should have seen her face when HR delivered the news. I stirred my coffee slowly. How did Omar take it? He couldn't say anything without raising suspicions, could he? But he looked like he was about to burst a blood vessel. My phone lit up with a text from Omar. Working late tonight, don't wait up. I showed it to Terrell. Damage control meeting, I bet. You're not worried they'll… What? Run away together? I laughed. No, Omar's too concerned about his image. And Valerie… I pulled out my tablet, showing Terrell the email I'd drafted. She's about to have bigger problems. What's this? An anonymous tip to the board about some accounting irregularities in the executive expense reports. Nothing major, just enough to trigger an audit. Faith, Terrell lowered his voice. That could get Omar in trouble too. Exactly. I took a sip of coffee. He's been sloppy with his expense reports lately. All those business dinners with Valerie. Let's see how they explain those to the auditors. My phone buzzed again. This time it was Ellie. Frank just called me. He's furious about Valerie's promotion rejection. Perfect timing, I muttered, then turned to Terrell. Want to help me with Phase 4? 20 minutes later, we were in Terrell's office. As head of HR, he had access to all employee files. Are you sure about this? I nodded, watching him pull up Omar's expense reports. Just forward them to the anonymous email address I gave you. The board will receive them tomorrow morning. Someone's coming. Terrell minimized the screen as footsteps approached. Valerie appeared in the doorway, her eyes red. When she saw me, she stopped short. Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't know you had company. Just catching up with an old friend, I said warmly. I heard about the promotion. I'm so sorry. She flinched. Thank you. I should go. Actually, I stood up. Can we talk? Woman to woman? Terrell shot me a warning look, but I ignored him. Valerie hesitated, then nodded. We walked to the building's coffee shop, an uncomfortable silence between us. After ordering, I turned to her. You know, I remember my first rejection for a promotion. It feels like the end of the world. I worked so hard, she whispered. I'm sure you did. But sometimes… I paused, choosing my words carefully. Sometimes our personal choices affect our professional lives. Her head snapped up. What do you mean? Oh, nothing specific. Just that perception is everything in corporate life, especially for women. I stirred my coffee. We have to be twice as careful about appearances. Mrs. Martin, Please, call me Faith. I touched her arm gently. And whatever you're about to say, don't worry. I'm sure everything will work out exactly as it should. Back at my office, I found 3 missed calls from Omar. I texted him. In meetings all afternoon. Everything okay? His response came quickly. We need to talk tonight. Can't. Girls' night with Ellie. Tomorrow? Fine. I smiled, imagining his frustration. The audit announcement would hit tomorrow morning, and he couldn't even warn Valerie. That evening, I met Ellie at her apartment. You're playing with fire, she said, pouring wine. What if this backfires? It won't. I showed her my phone. Look at Valerie's latest Instagram post. The photo showed a half-empty wine glass with the caption, Sometimes life forces you to make hard choices. She's breaking, Ellie observed. And Omar's about to crack too. I pulled up the email I'd sent to the board. By this time tomorrow, they'll both be under investigation. Faith. Ellie sat beside me. Are you sure this is what you want? It's not too late to just confront him, file for divorce. And let them think they got away with it? I shook my head. No, they need to understand that actions have consequences. My phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. I know what you're doing. I showed it to Ellie, smiling. Right on schedule. What do you mean? Frank, I knew Valerie would confide in him eventually. He's protective, remember? But he can't prove anything. You're terrifying, Ellie said, but she was smiling too. I learned from the best. I raised my glass. To karma. To karma, she echoed. And to whatever you have planned next. I thought about the final phase of my plan, scheduled for our anniversary next week. Omar and Valerie thought they were clever, thought they could play their game without consequences. But they were about to learn that sometimes the biggest threat isn't the one you can see coming. It's the one that's been there all along, watching, waiting, and planning. The office was in chaos. The audit announcement had hit like a tornado, leaving destruction in its wake. I watched from my desk as Omar paced back and forth in his office, phone pressed to his ear. The resignation letter is ready, Ellie said through my phone's speaker. Are you sure about the timing? Perfect timing, I replied, watching Valerie rush into Omar's office, clutching papers. The audit team arrives tomorrow. By then it'll be too late. A knock on my door made me jump. It was Layla, my boss and mentor of 5 years. Faith, got a minute? I ended the call with Ellie. Of course. Layla closed the door behind her. You know, it's interesting. All this drama with Omar's department, the audit, Valerie's failed promotion, and here you are, calm as ever. My heart skipped a beat, but I kept my face neutral. Should I not be? She sat down, studying me. I've known you for 5 years, Faith. You're one of the most strategic minds I've ever worked with. Nothing happens around you by accident. Are you accusing me of something? No. She smiled. I'm admiring your work, though I do wonder what the end game is. Before I could respond, my phone buzzed. A text from Omar. Where are you? We need to talk now. Trouble in paradise? Layla asked. Paradise was lost a while ago. I stood up. Excuse me, I need to handle this. I found Omar in his office, face pale. Valerie sat in a chair, tears streaming down her face. They both looked up when I entered. Faith, Omar rushed forward. I can explain. Explain what? I kept my voice innocent. The audit? I heard about that. Such bad timing, right after Valerie's promotion rejection. Mrs. Martin? Valerie started, but I cut her off. Please, I told you to call me Faith. I turned to Omar. What's going on? You seem stressed. The expense reports, he said. Someone's been going through them. The dinners, the hotels. Hotels? I let my voice crack. What hotels? The color drained from his face. Business meetings, all business. Really? I pulled out my phone, scrolling through photos. Like this business meeting at the Grand last month? The one where you said you were working late? They both froze. The photo showed them entering the hotel together, his hand on her lower back. How did you get this? I finished for him. Let's just say I'm not as naive as you thought. Valerie stood suddenly. I should go. Stay. My voice was steel. You'll want to hear this too. I pulled out an envelope. Your resignation letter, effective immediately. You can't, Omar started. Actually, I can. The board receives the full expense audit tomorrow, including every business dinner you two shared, every hotel receipt, every late-night meeting. I placed the letter on his desk. Sign it, Valerie, and this all stays quiet. Don't, and well, Frank might be the least of your worries. Valerie grabbed the letter with shaking hands. You planned this, all of it. Planned what? The audit? Your promotion rejection? The anonymous calls? I smiled. Prove it. Omar slumped in his chair. Faith, please, save it. I headed for the door. Oh, and Omar, don't forget our anniversary dinner next week. I've got something special planned. Back in my office, I found Layla waiting. Well, Phase 5 complete, I said, sitting down. Valerie resigns tomorrow morning. And Omar? He'll stew for a week, wondering what I have planned for our anniversary. Layla laughed. Remind me never to cross you. She stood to leave, then paused. You know, there's a VP position opening up next month. After this display of strategic thinking, I'd say you're a strong candidate. After she left, I texted Ellie. It's done. Valerie's resigning. How did Omar take it? Like a man watching his world crumble. I attached the photo I'd shown them. Amazing what a private investigator can catch on camera. You're actually scary, you know that? I learned from the best, sis. I looked out my office window, watching Omar's car leave the parking lot. He was probably heading to a bar, trying to figure out how everything had fallen apart so quickly. My phone buzzed one last time. A text from Valerie. I'm sorry, I never meant for any of this. I didn't respond. Her guilt wasn't my concern anymore. I had 1 week until our anniversary. 1 week to prepare the final act of this carefully orchestrated drama. Omar thought he knew what I was capable of. He thought this was the worst of it, but he had no idea what was coming. After all, the best revenge isn't just about destroying someone's present, it's about demolishing their future too. And I was just getting started. 3 days before our anniversary, Omar was a nervous wreck. He jumped every time his phone buzzed, watched me with wary eyes, and kept trying to gauge what I knew. I played my part perfectly, the oblivious wife planning a special anniversary dinner. I've made reservations at La Maison, I told him over breakfast. Remember our first date there? He nearly choked on his coffee. Faith, maybe we should talk about. About what? I looked up innocently from my tablet, where I was reviewing the final audit report Terrell had sent me. Nothing. He stood abruptly. I'll be late tonight, board meeting. Of course, I smiled. Say hi to Valerie for me. Oh, wait, she resigned, didn't she? How strange. The door slammed behind him. At work, Terrell caught me in the break room. The audit team found everything, he whispered. They're presenting to the board tomorrow. Perfect timing. Faith. Ellie's voice made us both jump. She stood in the doorway, face pale. We have a problem. She dragged me to my office, closing the door. Frank cornered me outside the courthouse. He knows. Knows what? That you orchestrated everything. The promotion rejection, the audit, Valerie's resignation. He's threatening to expose you. I laughed, pulling out my phone. Actually, this is perfect. I dialed Frank's number. He answered on the first ring. I was wondering when you'd call. Coffee? 20 minutes? Make it 10. I found him at the hospital cafe, still in his scrubs. He glared as I sat down. Before you start, I said, pulling out a folder, you might want to see these. Inside were photos, dozens of them. Omar and Valerie at various hotels, restaurants, intimate moments they thought were private. Your sister isn't the victim here, Frank. She knew he was married. She chose this. So this is revenge? Justice. I took a sip of coffee. You can expose me if you want, but ask yourself, who really gets hurt? Your sister's reputation is already damaged. This would destroy it completely. Frank stared at the photos. She's my little sister. And she made adult choices. Now she faces adult consequences. What do you want? Nothing. Just let this play out. I stood up. Unless you want these photos going public? Back at the office, Ellie was waiting. Well, Frank won't be a problem. I checked my watch. The board meeting starts in an hour. Want to watch the fireworks? We headed to the conference room floor, finding spots in the break room with a clear view. Through the glass walls, we could see Omar presenting, his forehead shiny with sweat. My phone buzzed. A text from Valerie. Please, I'll do anything. Too late, I typed back. Suddenly, the boardroom erupted in activity. Omar's face turned red as the audit team presented their findings. Through the glass, I could see him gesturing frantically. Mrs. Martin, a security guard approached. The board would like to see you. Inside the boardroom, all eyes turned to me. The head of the board, Margaret, spoke first. Mrs. Martin, were you aware of these expenses? Which expenses? I asked innocently. They showed me the reports. Hotels, dinners, gifts, all charged to the company account. Omar's face was ashen. Faith, please, he whispered. I'm shocked, I said, letting tears fill my eyes. All those late nights, the business meetings. Omar, how could you? Given the circumstances, Margaret said, we'll need your statement for the investigation. Of course. I wiped my eyes. Whatever you need. Later that evening, Omar didn't come home. Ellie brought wine and takeout instead. The board suspended him pending investigation, she said. His company phone and laptop are being confiscated tomorrow. Just in time for our anniversary. I raised my glass. One more day. What exactly do you have planned? I pulled out an envelope. Remember that prenup he insisted on? The one with the infidelity clause? Ellie's eyes widened. The one that says he loses everything if he cheats? Signed and witnessed by you, if I remember correctly. I smiled. Tomorrow night, he learns what it's like to lose everything you've built. You're not just taking his money, are you? Money? No. I pulled out another folder. I'm taking his reputation, his career, his dignity, everything he values. My phone lit up with a text from Omar. Can we talk, please? Tomorrow, I typed back. At dinner, our special anniversary dinner. Ellie shook her head. He has no idea what's coming, does he? That's the beauty of it. I tucked the folders away. He thinks tomorrow is about saving our marriage. He doesn't realize it's about destroying his entire life. Because sometimes, the best revenge isn't just about winning. It's about making sure your opponent loses everything they ever cared about. And tomorrow night, Omar would lose it all. La Maison was exactly as I remembered from our first date. Soft lighting, intimate tables, the gentle clink of expensive silverware. I arrived early, arranging the folders neatly beside my place setting. Omar was late as usual, but this time I didn't mind. It gave me time to savor what was coming. He rushed in, still wearing his office clothes, looking harried. Faith, I'm sorry. Sit. I gestured to the chair across from me. We have a lot to discuss. Listen, about the audit, the board meeting. Happy anniversary, I interrupted, sliding a small wrapped box across the table. He stared at it like it might explode. Faith, open it. His hands shook as he unwrapped the box. Inside was a USB drive. What's this? Everything. I took a sip of wine. Every text message, every hotel receipt, every photo of you and Valerie. But that's not the best part. I opened the first folder. This is. His face went pale as he read the documents. These are my personal bank statements. How did you get them? The same way I got everything else. Carefully, methodically. While you were busy playing house with your secretary, I was busy too. Faith, please, I can explain. Can you explain this? I pulled out another document. The prenup you insisted on, the one with the infidelity clause. The color drained from his face. You knew? All this time? I knew everything. I leaned forward. The audit? That was me. Valerie's promotion rejection? Me. The anonymous calls, the tips to her brother, all of it. Me. Why didn't you just confront me? And let you spin more lies? I laughed. No, you needed to learn something about consequences. The waiter approached, but I waved him away. What do you want? Omar's voice was barely a whisper. Everything. I opened the last folder. Sign these. He looked at the divorce papers, his hands shaking. You'll destroy my career. You did that yourself. The board already has copies of your expense reports. They're very interested in how company money funded your affair. I'll fight this. Really? I pulled out my phone, showing him the screen. Should I send these photos to the board? Your parents? Our friends? You've thought of everything, haven't you? I learned from the best. I smiled. You taught me how to be calculating, Omar. How to play the long game. I just got better at it than you. A commotion at the restaurant entrance drew our attention. Valerie stood there, mascara streaked down her face. Perfect timing, I murmured. Omar, she rushed to our table. They're saying we committed fraud. The board is... Valerie, I interrupted smoothly. So glad you could join us. Would you like to see what your affair actually cost? I spread the documents across the table. Bank statements, hotel receipts, photos, text messages. Her face crumpled as she read. You set us up, she whispered. No, you set yourselves up. I just made sure you faced the consequences. Omar reached for the divorce papers. If I sign these, the photos stay private. The board gets a simplified version of events. You both get to keep a shred of dignity. And if we don't? I stood, gathering my things. Then tomorrow, everyone sees everything. Your choice. You're enjoying this, Valerie accused. Actually, I'm not. I met her eyes. I'm just finishing what you started. Omar picked up the pen, his hand trembling. I never meant to hurt you. Funny. That's exactly what Valerie texted me. I watched him sign. The difference is, I don't care about intentions. I care about actions. I collected the signed papers, leaving them with their copies of the evidence. Happy anniversary, Omar. I dropped my wedding ring on the table. The gift of consequences. Hope it was worth it. Outside, Ellie was waiting in her car. How did it go? Exactly as planned. I slid into the passenger seat. Though Valerie's appearance was an unexpected bonus. You really are terrifying. No. I watched the restaurant disappear in the side mirror. I'm just someone who finally stopped being afraid. My phone buzzed with a text from Terrell. Board meeting tomorrow at 9. You ready? Ready, I typed back. Time to close this chapter. Where to? Ellie asked. I thought about the empty house waiting for me, the life I'd need to rebuild. But for the first time in months, I felt light. Free. Anywhere, I said, as long as it's forward. Because sometimes the best revenge isn't about destroying someone else's life. It's about reclaiming your own. And I was finally ready to start living mine again. The morning sun streamed through my new office window as I unpacked the last box. A gentle knock made me look up. It was Layla. "The view suits you," she said, admiring the corner office. "VP of Strategic Operations. Has a nice ring to it." I placed my favorite photo on the desk. Me and Ellie at her law firm's charity gala last week. Still feels surreal. "You earned it." Layla sat down. "Though I have to ask, was all of this part of your plan too?" "The promotion?" I laughed. "No, that was just karma being particularly poetic." My phone buzzed. A news alert. The headline made me smile. "Major corporate scandal leads to executive resignation." Omar's finally gone public with his resignation. I showed Layla the article. Apparently he's taking a position at a smaller firm in Alaska. And Valerie? Last I heard, she's working at her brother's medical practice. Quite a step down from executive aspirations. Terrell burst into my office, waving his tablet. "Have you seen the comments on the company's internal message board? Everyone's talking about how you handled the audit presentation to the board." "I just stated the facts," I said, remembering how I'd laid out the evidence of financial misconduct without once mentioning the affair. Professional to the end. "You destroyed them without ever getting your hands dirty," Layla observed. "That's why you're sitting in this office now." My phone rang. "Ellie, turn on the local news. Channel 5. I grabbed the remote, switching on the office TV. Omar stood outside his lawyer's office, surrounded by reporters. "Mr. Martin, any comment on the allegations of corporate fraud?" "No comment," he muttered, looking old and defeated. "What about rumors that your ex-wife is now VP at your former company?" His head snapped up, eyes wide. I switched off the TV. "Still enjoying the consequences, I see." Terrell grinned. "Actually, I'm done watching." I stood up. "I have a lunch meeting with the new executive team. Time to focus on the future." Speaking of future, Layla pulled out an envelope. "The board wanted me to give you this personally." Inside was a formal letter appointing me to the company's strategic planning committee. My hands shook slightly as I read it. "They were impressed by how you handled the audit," Layla explained. "Said anyone who could manage a crisis that professionally deserves a voice in the company's future." "Ironic," Terrell mused, "how trying to destroy your career led to advancing it instead." My phone buzzed again. A text from Frank. "Valerie's doing better. Thank you for keeping the photos private." "Some lessons don't need public humiliation to stick," I typed back. As my office cleared out, I took a moment to appreciate the quiet. The divorce was final, the drama was over, and somehow I'd emerged stronger than ever. A knock on my door interrupted my thoughts. It was Margaret from the board. "Got a minute?" she asked. "We're discussing the company's 5-year plan, and I'd love your input on strategic restructuring." "Of course." I grabbed my tablet, then paused at the door. "Actually, I have some ideas about preventing future financial misconduct." She smiled knowingly. "I bet you do." Walking to the conference room, we passed Omar's old office, now occupied by someone new, someone honest. The nameplate on my own door caught my eye. Faith Wise, VP Strategic Operations. I'd taken back my maiden name, but more importantly, I'd taken back my power. My phone lit up with a message from Ellie. "Dinner tonight? We're celebrating." "Absolutely," I replied, "but not because of karma or revenge." "Then what are we celebrating?" I looked around at my new office, thought about my new role, my new life. "We're celebrating moving forward," I typed. The best revenge wasn't destroying Omar's life. It was building mine into something better than he could ever imagine. Because in the end, the greatest victory wasn't in watching him fall. It was in rising so high that his fall became irrelevant. And as I walked into that board meeting, head held high, I knew I'd won something far more valuable than revenge. I'd won my future. And this time I was writing my own story, one where I wasn't the victim or even the vengeful victor. I was simply myself, strong, capable, free. And that was the best ending I could have written.